All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in again to another episode of the Pressing Forward podcast. Today we got United States Marine John. He runs the Instagram page NightFighter, and he's out there making some sweet gear for your tactical needs. So, John, how you doing today, brother?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, dude. I love the keeping in the zone, like that persona. I love it.
Got to stay focused.
Yeah, hell yeah. I see you're doing some work too. We got double tasking here, getting some shit ran up and doing this with me. So I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, I'm sewing up an order of. I don't know if you follow Kruszczyki. I might be saying his
I don't
page
I
wrong.
don't I don't think so. I'm sure I might, but the name does not ring a bell.
He makes smocks and like custom camos, and then he sells surplus gear. But I'm sewing up an order for him. He's going to be selling them on his site.
Nice. So is that your product, like one of your like either your bandolier, or your chest rig, or the Fenris?
Yeah, he wants some bandoliers to sell on his website.
Yeah, those bandoliers, I mean, it's funny because you can see the trends that start to pop back up. And I've been seeing you making the bandoliers for quite some time now. Now everybody's kind of throwing, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think ingenuity and obviously people out there making their own products and putting them out. It's like, you got to be coming up with something fresh if you want to stay on the market.
Yeah, and there's some cool bandolier designs I've seen out there, like Shaw Concept has a good
Yeah,
one.
Shaw Concepts has got some great shit, dude. I love their products, and it's always good to see a Marine out there kicking ass and doing some good shit. So, we'll dive into that. When I like to just get started. I don't asking where you're from, how life was like growing up, and what led you to join the Marine Corps. So, you want to fill us in on some of that?
Yeah, I'm originally from South Carolina in a town called Buford. It's a little coastal town. Take you 5 minutes to drive through it, real small.
Okay,
And so I grew up there and in Kentucky mostly until I was about 14. So I kind of grew up in the South until I was about 14 years old, and then I moved to Yuma, Arizona.
all right,
And I moved around a lot as a kid because my dad was in the Marines as well. He did a career, so he did 22 years. There's an air base in Yuma. He was an air wing guy, so we ended up there. He retired out of there, and I ended up living in Yuma longer than any place else. So
got it,
for the most part, I just tell people I'm from Yuma,
got it. All right.
unless you get to know me.
Yeah, but
Uh,
that lifestyle of like kind of growing up in the Marine Corps, were you introduced to a lot of that, um, I guess like camaraderie, like seeing that way? Like, did your dad like bring you around a bunch of the other Marines?
oh yeah, I was at all the little company get-togethers, and they were pogues. I don't want to trash pogues, but well, they don't do too many PT events. But I did get to go to the ones that he had.
Nice.
Like I remember, he was also a recruiter for a couple of years. So I remember doing some of the recruiting events that he would do with his poolees, and one of them was like a ruck. So I remember being 12 with an Alice pack on my back, and that's probably where I started my fondness for the Alice packs.
Yeah, I think the Alice pack is like they're the medium sized ones are the ones that are made for like carrying the 117s though. Those I do not like the large one or the small one. Like they're the one that's like the middle size. There's just something about the way that it fits, and I don't know. I'm not a fan of that one. But do you think that um doing all that stuff was something that motivated you to want to join the Marine Corps? Like did that thought
Oh
come
yeah,
into your head? Yeah.
yeah. Since I mean, anybody that knows me when I joined the Marines, they were like, "Oh yeah, no shit."
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah,
It,
because I mean, on top of that, my favorite thing to play as a kid was Army or War or whatever.
yeah,
You know,
definitely.
I'd grab a stick and use it as a gun and stuff like that. And then like I mentioned, when my dad was a recruiter, I would do those poolee events with the poolies. And the hilarious thing was, like, at 12 years old, I could do more pull-ups than some of those guys.
I was gonna say that's probably
So
funny and embarrassing to see some 12-year-old kid there with like an Alice pack just like out rucking you. I mean, it's really not surprising to me, um, because I remember being at like the recruiting station and there was some kid like when we would do the pool functions there was kids that you jump up on the pull-up bar and these kids are barely able to do three pull-ups and wasn't that like the minimum requirement in order to be sent to boot camp? I think like you had to do at least three pull-ups to be able to ship to boot camp. I don't know
yes,
and that standard is quite weak. I was actually talking with a guy that's a National Guard recruiter the other day and they lowered the ASVAB score to get into the National Guard. What do you think the number is?
20.
The same age you were when you were rucking around with that Alice pack.
Holy
12, dude. 12. Fucking 12 to get into I mean like that's borderline. I mean, I don't know if it's okay to say retarded, but that's borderline, like I don't know. That's ridiculous. I don't think how do you allow guys to join the military with an ASVAB score of 12?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, that kind of person, the lights are on, but nobody's home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Um, but what
But
was
anyway, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, did when you growing up, I think we're around the same age. You were probably in what, fifth grade when 9/11 happened?
Ninth grade.
Ninth grade. Oh shit, so you're a little bit older than me. Okay, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I'm 37.
Damn, okay, I'm 31. So I was in fifth grade, you were in ninth grade, so you remember that a little more clearly, huh?
Oh yeah, the air base in Yuma was all heavily guarded when I woke up that morning and left. Because I remember seeing the gate guards with like M4s and shotguns, and they were stacking sandbags and shit like that. So everybody was freaked out, and I had no idea what had happened yet. But yeah, going to school that day, I heard about it. I saw it on the TV, and I went to a Catholic school, so we had like a prayer session for the victims and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I pretty much knew my dad was going to end up getting deployed, and he did. So
Did that
yeah, it was
did that happening? Like, did you know before that point that you were on the process of being a Marine Corps? Did that solidify like your motivation to want to enlist?
ultimately, yeah. So I didn't join right out of high school. It actually took I went to college because there's some things that happened that delayed me from joining.
Okay.
But yeah, everyone in high school thought I was crazy because even when Iraq kicked off, I was still like, yeah, I'm going to join the Marines. And that was when Iraq was bad, and the casualty reports were coming in, and
Yeah.
comparatively to other wars, the casualties weren't that bad. But
For what we're exposed to and like what you're seeing on the
yeah,
news, you hear about Ramadi and Fallujah and all that coming back where there's, basically entire platoons of some battalions being like taken out and with it like killed in a deployment, not to mention the casualties that come from that. So uh
yeah,
those some of those numbers are pretty heavy, and especially when it was really, really going when the getting not
yeah.
hot and heavy. Um, so you go through high school, you got you say you want to join the Marine Corps, even while all the combat's like going on. You go to college, you graduate from college, I assume.
I got my associate's degree. So
Okay,
what really prevented me from joining right out of high school was my parents were. So my parents were actually both of my parents actually were Marines. My mom did 3 years, and then back when she was in the her and my dad were in the early '80s, they would let women get out if they were pregnant.
okay,
So she got pregnant with me and got out of the military. But they both were like, "Look, the Marine Corps is fucking stupid. Don't join." I was like, that was their uh, pitch to me. And
yeah.
so I respected my parents. So I was like, okay, well, if you're both putting it that way, maybe I'll listen to you. But ultimately, I was like, look, this is something I have to do, and I did it. So
And
it took years. I graduated in '05 and I joined in '09.
okay, yeah. So we joined at the same time then. I think I was in boot camp in like June of '09, India Company, and
Yeah, February. So right before
okay.
you.
Nice. So you get to boot camp, being exposed to that Marine Corps environment for pretty much your whole life, or actually your whole life. Did you excel in boot camp? Was it pretty easy for you?
Yeah, and my drill instructors kind of knew that after the first month. You know how they get the ability to assess everybody as time goes on, and yeah, boot camp was, it was hard, air quote hard, because it's just a suck fest and they're just fucking with you all the time. But it wasn't. I never said to myself like, oh my god, I can't do this. Whereas, you know, as you know, there's always like at least one kid that tries to kill themselves because it's too hard or
Yeah.
something like that.
Dude, we had, I know there's people that say these stories, but we had a kid jump off the third deck, like in the barracks or the squad bays. Like he jumped not in my platoon, the platoon across the hallway. We're standing there and he comes running out, dude, and just jumps off the third deck, broke both legs. Nothing bad happened other than, well, broke both of his legs, but you're like, holy shit, man. Like it was not that bad. The amount of people that I saw just being weak, just weak men that had no, and weak boys at that point in time. You got 17, 18, 19-year-old kids crying. I had one kid said that he couldn't do it anymore because everything gave him headaches. All the yelling gave him headaches. I remember when we were graduating boot camp, we were in that like recruit week or whatever, or Marine week, and we were all marching around, like had you know full. We were all Marines after the Crucible, and this kid was like still in his running shoes and a fucking glow belt, and he was in like the whatever platoon that those guys. So if he would have just stayed, he would have graduated. But he's there the whole time waiting to get processed out. And you're just like, dude, I don't understand it. I really don't.
Yeah, and I would just wonder, like, did you guys know you were joining the Marine Corps? Like the guys that would break down and cry and stuff. Like, what did you think this was?
Yeah, well, fuck, dude, you probably had some guy that was a recruiter like swindling some high school kid. And not that, obviously that the recruiter is not. I should I was gonna say the job's not just to lie to people, but some of them are pretty fucking good at swindling kids into joining the Marine Corps. But just that ability to kind of shape it for certain individuals, like if they know some kid's gonna like, oh, this is the kid that I'm gonna get to join the band. I'm gonna meet my fucking quota on getting a kid to join the Marine Corps band, and he's some like incapable person, but the guy's just, I got to do this. And you're like, dude, like that really puts it into perspective. Like you see they're getting rid of scout snipers, but they have that like, did you see the video of that staff sergeant like rapping? He was like on stage at some type of event. They're all in their dress, not their dress blue deltas or whatever, the short sleeves, and he's like
Uh-huh.
dancing around on stage, like rapping and singing. And you're like, we're getting rid of scout snipers, but we're like promoting this? What the fuck? Like how it just doesn't make sense. It does not.
Yeah, well, our forces are degrading as our society degrades. So it the Romans went through the same thing. The Romans increasingly had to rely on auxiliary troops instead of their native Roman soldiers, and I kind of view it in that same way.
Yeah.
They'd have armies of guys from like Gaul and places like that, and because the native Romans didn't want to volunteer to fight, they didn't care about they grew up soft. They didn't care about the country as much, and so they had less native born soldiers and more foreign soldiers fighting for them, and that was part of their downfalls because your foreign soldiers are never going to fight as hard as your native born.
Yeah, not for their land, you
They're,
see like
yeah,
yeah.
they're not as invested in it as your native soldiers would be. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
'cause
kind of view it that way, man. It's just the forces are degrading as our society degrades, as people care less about preserving what this country was founded on. Our military follows.
yeah. It's sad to see. And you'd hope that, I mean, there still are guys out there getting it. Like you look at a lot of the pages out there that are promoting like the military, specifically like I'm sure that you follow along some of like the infantry pages, like the Goons Up style stuff, but they're out there showing that, It's not just reminiscing on previous like engagements and showing conflict and, some guys running a 240 off a rooftop. It's showing these like small unit leaders and these infantry Marines um, out there putting in the work and being able to effectively, take on the tasks at hand. And it's good to see that there's still that lineage and that legacy that is following on, and there's guys like walking in our footsteps of keeping that tradition alive. Like it's good to know that there's still a community out there.
Yeah, and I think it's good. And one of the reasons I started talking about the covert infantry stuff is, there's no like advanced skills out there really. It's all just needing to be uh, brilliant in the basics, to
Yeah.
use that age old term. I remember being at ITB, and one of my instructors said, there you can win wars with the basics. You just have to be good at the basics and apply the basics in really tough situations, and you can win. There's no advanced firearm skills, tactical skills, nothing like that. You just have to be able to apply the basics. And that kind of stuck with me. And that's also part of my products, because all my products are simple and meant for, it's geared for, like civilians, but it all revolves around just basic application of, self-defense. And
Yeah, no, that's definitely something that you've shown. I mean, I think anybody can go back and attest to the fact that all wars are really fought. I mean, there's obviously your special forces, your high speed guys, the dudes with the sweet gear, like doing the like behind enemy lines covert operations or hard knocks on targets at 2 o'clock in the morning with quad tube NVG style stuff. But um your brilliance in the basics, i.e. your infantry battalions or your line battalions and dudes that are out there on the front lines, like implementing those basic fire and maneuver tactics and setting up ambushes and all that like I guess patrolling and reconnaissance and shit like that. All the basic building blocks of there, like you've got something to build on, but if you effectively can do those basic things, you're pretty fucking effective. And you know that just as well as I do. But
yeah,
getting back Marine Corps boot camp, kind of a little trial, a little tribulation. You come out on the other side, the United States Marine. What's going through your head? Like, are you ready for the next level? Are you in? Is it what you thought it was going to be?
no, it already wasn't.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Marine Corps overall has very high standards, but I just remember thinking like, like the weak bodies that didn't want to be there. I just remember thinking like, why do we keep these guys? Because in my mind, I remember seeing a few years later when I was still in the Marines, but I remember seeing a documentary about Ranger selection, where if you didn't want to be there, you could quit, and if you didn't meet the standard, you were kicked out. And I thought that's how it was going to be in boot camp. I thought for sure if you don't want to be here, they'll just let you walk away, but that wasn't the case. You know,
Yeah.
even even the elite Marine Corps still pushed guys through that shouldn't have been there, and blah blah blah.
No, yeah.
So I was still looking forward to going to the next level, but I was already kind of like, this isn't quite as elite as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And I think it all takes shape more so. There's still those numbers that trickle through, but when you go on to that follow school, like, MCT or ITB, and then you kind of shift that split of seeing uh, the differences in mindset that where your non-combat arms MOS have to your combat arms MOSs. I mean, I guess you still, you've got tankers and combat engineers and plenty of dudes that still are able to effectively do their jobs that go to the MCT side. But with
Yeah.
ITB, did you personally see like a shift in some of the guys, or were you still kind of disappointed with the caliber of person that was going through infantry training?
I was still disappointed. Yeah, there were definitely some great guys, and I'm not saying I was the best either, but like I gave a fuck and I wanted to be there.
Yeah, no, that and that's the mindset, like that you can be dude, when I was in ITB, I was probably like 130 pounds, like 5'8", five I was still I don't even think I'd hit fucking puberty yet, dude. Um I'm just turning I turned 18 years old in boot camp, so I'm still like a kid, at ITB. Um, and I wasn't the biggest dude, and I'm running around with a fucking saw going on hikes that I've never gone on distance rucks like that before with that much weight. But never
Yeah,
fell out, kept pushing through. You got guys that'll just like give up. And if you want to be there, you can be there. And I think that you have the potential to grow. And I think that's what some people need to see. Like you're not always going to be the strongest guy, but you've got different attributes that can push you towards success in different areas, and then you can build on those things. You know
yeah,
I think that's why there's some people that are, I don't want to say pushed through, but they know with the right amount of shaping and molding and training that you do have potential to become something more.
yeah. And I enjoyed the training because it was the infantry specific stuff. Like I remember going through the combat hunter little courses that they gave us, and I thought that was cool stuff.
Yeah,
And and yeah, I grew a little bit. I mean, I fell out of hikes a couple times, so that was one thing that I realized that I had to fix. So it wasn't that I went there and performed perfectly. It was just you still had the guys that were like maybe they didn't know what the infantry actually was or whatever, but you still had the guys that just kind of like sandbagged it and stuff. So that was
definitely.
just, but overall, yeah, I enjoyed ITB. Definitely some funny ass stories that of
Let,
things. Yeah.
let's hear one. You got one for me that comes to mind?
Oh, just so towards the end of ITB, I got myself in shape to where I didn't fall out of hikes anymore. Uh, and so I remember going up the ankle breaker, and you were West Coast, right?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, we were going up the ankle breaker this time, whereas previously we had gone down it on hikes.
Yeah, because the
But
ankle breaker is the one that's further away from Horno, right? Like if you're looking at Recon Ridge, ankle breaker is to your right, microwaves to your left, closer to Camp Horno, right?
yeah, and
Okay.
it's just ridiculously steep
Yep.
part of that ridge line. Thus, though, it's called the ankle breaker. But we're going up at this time, and I'm doing good, right? I'm chugging along, and all of a sudden I hit a wall, and I'm like, "Fuck! I feel like I'm gonna fall out right now." And then I look behind me, and there's a fucking dude hanging off my ISO mat, like using me as a tow truck. And so I shake his ass off, and he rolls down the hill, and he's just fucking crying, like, so,
Oh, that is fucking funny.
yeah, that was pretty funny because misery always makes me laugh.
I think that's like I think most Marines have that sadistic sense of humor where when you
Yeah,
see not that you're like a bad person, but when like that kid didn't die, it's like seeing the look on his face and the tears streaming down his face as he's like struggling to keep pressing on. Like yeah,
yeah. And probably another good one was one of the instructors. His name was Sergeant Rex. He We're walking along. I forget where we were going, but it's another hike. We're hiking out to like a range, and we're going to stay there for the week and train. And this guy had his uh, chin strap undone on his helmet, and his helmet was canted. And if you ever saw the old pictures of like John Wayne in the sands of Iwo Jima, it was like that, right? Like old World War II. We just hit the beach type shit. And so he walks up to him and he's like, "Oh, hey there, John Wayne. Fucking sands of Iwo Jima. You got a BAR in your hand?" And he just takes his helmet and he just chucks it off the mountain. And he's like, "Go get it." And so I just see this guy disappear in the bushes trying to find his helmet. And so
That's
thought that was
awesome. Yeah, I've
just
seen
the fact that you got a BAR in your hand.
yeah. Like no, he's like carrying like an M4, like struggling to get along. I think I've told this before, but one of the funniest things that I saw in ITB, it was like the first, I think it was like one of the first fire, not it was like buddy team rush range. All right. So it was like one of the first field ops. You did like a 5K or 10K out to the range, and there's like a little berm, and you do like tables. 3 and 4 and then like buddy rushes or something. Anyways, we're like eating chow and this kid says something to one of the instructors, and all the instructors that we had, like these guys were all with 2-4 in Ramadi, and like, like some of them were there in like 2004 as fucking PFCs, some of them went back again in 2006. So they were all just like some hard-hitting motherfuckers, right? And they did not take shit from anybody. Obviously, they're fucking sergeants, but this kid was like standing on top of the berm, and he was like wasn't standing at parade rest, and the sergeant was like, who the fuck you think you're talking to? And this is how I knew that we were in a different, like this was what changed my thought on, oh man, this is way different. The kid was like standing there like nonchalant, and this guy, he's wearing his like interceptor, and he just steps back and boom, boot kicks like Spartan. This is Sparta. And the kid just off the side of the berm like lands straight on his back, gasping for air. And no one like rushes to his aid. This kid's like rolling around crying and shit. And you're just like, okay, so here they will fuck you up. Like it's not like boot camp where your drill instructors aren't like hitting you. They're getting a little physical with you, yelling in your face and shit. But once it hit ITB, it was like, okay, these guys will fuck you up. Like there's no games here.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a kid got his head kicked into a saw because he was being light on the trigger. I think it was a squad attack range, and the dude on the saw is doing like 2 or 3 round bursts instead of letting it rip.
Yeah.
And I think his name was Sergeant Gibson. He comes up and he's like, "Fire, bitch!" and just kicks him in the back of the head, and he
Yeah.
just eats the rear side of the saw.
Yeah, your injuries are not service connected. Yeah, I had a similar one. We were doing buddy rushes, and you got an instructor behind you. This dude was a machine gunner. He had these, I don't even know his name because this was before the split, but he had these tattoos. They were like flames on his wrist, right? They came from the top of his hand and then went up, up his sleeve, um, both arms. And I was like, that's pretty fucking gay, dude. Um,
I was
but
about to say,
yeah. And but no, he was a mean motherfucker. So I'm getting up and I'm rushing with my saw. I didn't put my weapon on safe. And all of a sudden, boom, I feel a kick in my back. I go down to the ground, grabs my Kevlar from the front while he puts his boot on like the small of my back and like scorpions me. I'm flailing around. He's gets down in my ear and he's like, "Don't ever fucking get up without putting your weapon on safe again, bitch." And I was like, "Yes, Sergeant." Like, "Yes, Sergeant." I was like, never forgot to put my saw on safe ever again.
yeah,
Um, pain retains and like that kind of shit right there, especially as you're being molded into like a young warfighter, or like where you're getting those basic building blocks instilled in you. Like that's some of the most important things, like putting your weapon on safe. If you don't have a way to properly incorporate that and somebody's not paying attention, especially when you're doing a live fire range, like you're not only jeopardizing like yourself or what like you could possibly fuck somebody up to your left or to your right. So I understand the like at the point in time I didn't, but then now obviously I understand the severity of that. So um
oh yeah, and like I said, that one instructor who told me that you win wars with the basics. I mean, that stuck with me my whole life.
yeah,
So
that's true. So ITB, you enjoyed it. Seems like, there's a little tough stuff in there, but that I guess like self-help, self-advocating, like you realizing like, fuck man, I'm not doing too well with my hikes, in which a lot of guys don't do, like they go out and they don't go out and work at it. So it seems like you put in the work, dedicated yourself to, oh, Chief, sorry, my dog's like nuzzling on me hard here. Get out of here, buddy. Um, but you do well, you get done with ITB, and then I know you got selected for security forces, right?
yeah, in boot camp. So
Okay.
yeah, I got picked to be part of the like the presidential support program,
Okay.
which is basically you do security for either Camp David or you do security for the president's communications equipment. Like when he goes abroad, you guard that stuff. And I got sent to Camp David, but yeah, in boot camp, I got pulled aside by my senior drill instructor, and I kind of mentioned that my drill instructors got the sense that like when I was in boot camp, I was doing well. There wasn't anything really that was hard for me, and these recruiters for that unit come by. I don't know if they do it every boot camp, but they come and they talk to people, talk to the recruits, and try to get them to sign up or volunteer for this unit. And so that's how I ended up being there. And it was kind of an interesting experience because my recruiter was like, "Hey, you're going to go talk to these people about this thing," and that's basically all he told me.
Yeah.
But anybody who was an 03 had to go at least listen to these people give their spiel. And they straight up fucking lie to you.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you, like, do you think that they coax, like, you know, almost, I don't know the right, like, you forcefully volunteered for this job, like,
You can absolutely tell them to fuck off. It's one of the few times that you can, especially as a recruit, it's one of the few times you can go, nah, fuck that. However, I was just dumb enough to believe their lies because, I was a motivated kid. I was a hard charger, and they make it sound like you're going to Delta Force. So
yeah,
of course, fuck yeah, I'll do it. They told me I was going to go to sniper school, right? So why wouldn't you say yes?
right,
Especially that I didn't necessarily want to be a sniper, but if I'm interested in getting into stuff like that, and you tell me I'm going to get that school if I go to this certain unit, why wouldn't I volunteer, right? So I fell for the lies and I ended up there. And I did get to go to a lot of training that most grunts don't get to go to. It just wasn't to the level that they tell you to get you to say yes.
right. Well, and you guys probably focused on more like, you probably may have gotten to do like an evasive driving course or like a lot of CQB stuff or doing schools that most of your like line battalion grunts wouldn't do. But then, there's like a give and take to that because then you're not doing like range 400 style, like, platoon operate, like I'm saying, like there's like a differentiation in like your level of preparedness for the environment that you're obviously going to be in. So like more PSD oriented shit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it actually ended up being a good resume builder for when I got out.
Definitely.
Because I had some security jobs when I got out, and I could say like I specifically have uh, bullet point requirements from your job description. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can also be like, yeah, I worked at Camp David where the president would go. So essentially, like anybody that you have that you're securing, as a D as a what do they call it? A fucking not a primary or a principal,
Yeah.
like anybody that you're securing, like I've already done the top tier dude, like
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not. I was never a close protection agent for him, but I was definitely around him with a loaded gun.
Yeah,
You know,
that I have a couple buddies that have been at Camp David. I'm not sure if like how small that community is, but I know that my buddy Ernie Boswell was there at the same time. Like he shot hoops with good old Barry. He was out there shooting trap and skeet with Barry, like he said that he was actually a pretty solid dude, so I hold nothing against him in that regard if he's going to be out there like engaging with the Marines that are on Camp David. That's pretty cool.
I know Boswell. Yeah.
Do you?
Yep.
No shit. Okay, yeah, he came over to 3rd LER with me after his time at Camp David. So he was in my platoon. I still keep in touch with him this day. He's a good dude. Um,
Yeah, he was. Yeah, good kid. He was. I can't remember. He was in my platoon. I can't remember if I was his squad leader directly, but he was in my platoon up there.
gotcha. So what was that when you went to security forces school, like after ITB, you got roped into going into doing it. Were you were you like immediately disappointed to find out that it's not what those guys had told you?
Yeah, I was disappointed because I didn't get to deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan, and pretty much doing that assignment made sure that I didn't deploy.
Gotcha.
So I was disappointed by that for a long time, even after I got out. And but the training itself was good. Like security force school is good training. Like I learned how to set up a vehicle checkpoint very well. So they do a good job of teaching you stuff like that. Because if you asked a private that went straight to a line unit how to set up a VCP, he probably doesn't know much about it. But we got an entire class on it as privates and lance corporals. and then you go out in the field and you set up a VCP and an ECP, and they have role players where you have to search people and detain people and blah blah blah. So it is good training on face value, but a lot of kids there are in the same situation I was in. They got lied to. They were told, because guys from fast platoons and everything else, they get told that they're going to be doing like VBSS.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they're going to go, fuck yeah, I'll do that. Like they don't know better. And then turns out, well,
You're
fast
sitting in
isn't it?
Djibouti, dude. You're in Djibouti for fucking however long.
Yeah, turns out it's not that high speed.
Yeah.
And so the training itself is good, but one thing that you learn about security force school is all the staff there are just fucking shitbags. Like they end up there because they don't end up there because they're high performers. It's like people that the Marine Corps want to tuck away. Like the commanding officer there was some major that was just a fat fuck, you know. And it's funny because you go through that school with other NCOs because it's a B billet for guys.
Okay.
And so one of our sergeants was a sniper, and he had to pull us aside, and he even told us, he's like, because it was a day after we had done some simunition training in one of the mount towns at the base where you go. It's at Chesapeake Point or something like that. I forget the name of the base where you train. But these guys, first of all, we were doing a urban exercise with like one magazine, right? So we all run out of ammo within the first 3 minutes. But they chewed our ass and said we performed like shit and blah 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 blah. And this sergeant had to pull us aside, and he was like, "You guys actually did really well, and this training was actually fucking bullshit because you didn't have the adequate amount of ammo to even perform an urban assault."
Yeah, they give you like one mag of sim rounds or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah. But this sergeant was a sniper, squared away dude who had been there, done that. And he let us know, like, look, I don't mean to talk shit about people who are teaching you, but let me go ahead and talk shit about people who are teaching you, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's you know, coming from the perspective of somebody that may have just come from the fleet and obviously keeps their, training to a certain level, like a certain standard. And then you go to this environment where you just see like weak men that are like, why are these guys here? If this is such an
Yeah,
important role that you're told about, and then you come here and it's this just weak body, fat body people that don't have any discipline or any character, and then they're in, like I feel like that's a negative thing because that then implements down and creates a fucking shit mindset from the start.
yeah. And I mean, but it did help me personally with my attitude because I never decided to be like them, right? Like I always told myself, well, regardless of how shitty everybody else is, I'm going to be squared away and solid.
Yeah.
Uh, so I developed that mindset going to seeing things like that. But just to let you know how fucked up that place is, after I graduated that school, one of our instructors got busted for dealing dope. Another instructor went to prison for shooting his kid.
Jesus.
Yeah, and then one of the admin guys there got arrested for a pyramid scheme, or got maybe not arrested, but got demoted or fired.
Charged or something for a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme. Like,
Yeah,
hey,
he
if you
was.
guys give me $5, I'll fucking give you 10 back. Like
Yeah, it was like an energy drink pyramid scheme, and he was roping students at the school into it. So
it's fucker.
yeah, so it's a clown show. Just even though I received some good training there, it's a fucking clown show. Now that's not to be confused with the Marine Corps CQB school that is also there. That side of the house is fucking squared away. Like that's a legit course.
Is that something that you got the opportunity to go and do?
I didn't get to go there at the course. However, they came to Camp David and gave us like a condensed version of that school. So I think that school is like a month, and we had 2 weeks.
Okay.
They came trained us for like 2 weeks.
Nice. And that now I guess we'll get into you know, kind of passing C or not CQB school, security forces school. You get sent to Camp David. Um are you I'm trying to gauge what the environment's like because obviously the president's not there at Camp David all the time. So when you guys are there, um, I don't want to call it relaxing, but what's that mindset like of training and like routine and what your schedule is like when you're not on duty?
Well, I'll back up a little bit because before you go to your actual like presidential assignment, you go to Marine Barracks, Washington at 8th and I, and you're guarding that base. And
Okay.
basically, you're there waiting for your clearance to go through, and you're also there as like an evaluation. Like they want to see if you're a fuck up, which a lot of guys get cut at that point because they go do something stupid and get kicked out of the program.
Okay, now what happens then if you're one of those guys and you get cut? Where do they send you? Just to the whims of the Marine Corps?
No, it actually it really fucking sucks. Like you stay there, and they have this platoon. We call them the blueberries. You wear blue fatigues, and you are a fucking gardener and a janitor. It is like the
No way.
it's the worst fate. Um,
I did not know that's a thing. Holy shit.
yeah, it really sucks because some guys will fuck up on purpose because their hearts and but their guys will fuck up on purpose because they want to go to the fleet to deploy. Like some of these dudes, their heart's in the right place. It's just the
But
Marine Corps being
they don't know that shit, like
they,
they don't know that that's the fate that's waiting for them.
yeah. And once I was there for a little bit, when we would get new guys, that's exactly what I would tell them. I'm like, look, I know this shit sucks, but do not fuck up because that's what awaits you. And some of them would still do it, thinking like, no, no, they'll give me orders somewhere.
Oh God.
Yeah,
It's so bad, dude. And see, that's enlightening because you know what? Maybe some young kid will fucking hear this or something, like I think that and that's a different perspective to see because I didn't know that shit. I think most people don't know that. That's pretty wild.
and that that base, if imagine all the just mo-tarded bullshit that the Marine Corps has, that place it is like the concentrate
So
of
in the sense of like your uniform, everything pressed and taken care of, sleeves perfectly
it.
rolled, boot blousings,
Yeah,
haircuts,
it's
everything.
the pony show center of the Marine Corps. So, like, if I could bottle up motardation in a condensed form and sell it as a product, that's where I would bottle it.
Yeah, what's
You know?
it called? Bulldog or whatever? That shit that we had in
Yeah,
the aftershave? That's pretty much what it is.
yeah. So it's another place where it's just a country club for it's all dog and pony show stuff, and it's a country club for like senior enlisted and officers.
Gotcha.
You
Gotcha.
know, it's a fucking joke. It's great if you're one of those guys. Like those guys live the fucking life. Um,
Now, did
but
that seeing that type of thing, like you say, those guys live that life, did that put like a negative taste in your mouth about thinking of what Marines, were and what what the mission was? Like you see, you're like, how are we in this time of war? And this is the, I guess,
yeah,
mentality that a lot of these guys have.
yeah, it was eye opening for me because everybody in that unit, like I said, they want to deploy. Everybody in the security unit there, like guys would fuck up in hopes of getting kicked out and getting orders to the fleet so they could deploy. And then you have people there who, if you would let them, they would hide there 20 years and retire. And so I saw that. I saw that that was probably the most eye opening part is I realized like, wait, you joined the Marines and you just want to be here at this base stateside um, during a time of war when you could go out there and get some, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was eye opening. And then I got introduced to how uh, lopsided the UCMJ is depending on what rank you are. So we would catch captains, both male and female captains, fucking E3s, uh, and nothing would happen to them, And then guys in our unit would commit the most minor of infractions and just get fried.
Yeah. I
You know
mean,
what I
dude,
mean?
that's a fucking tale as old as time, brother. And it's like it's sad to see that that's the way that there's no standard of accountability or the ease in which you can get away with things. And I shouldn't say that's in all aspects. Like I've seen some staff sergeants that have made some mistakes and they got busted down to sergeant. And then there goes
Yeah.
your entire fucking career. But for the most part, you see that officers and staff NCOs at like a higher level get away with a lot more shit.
Yeah. I mean, there was a female captain there. We called her Captain Legs because, I mean, she was hot. She was hot. But she would tailor her skirts to be shorter. Like her skirts were never in reg, but nobody said anything because she was hot, right?
Yeah.
Well, he was one of the people that we would see coming into our barracks with lance corporals and privates.
No
And
way.
I'm not a cock blocker. Like, hey, more power to that dude. If you can bang some, like that E3 bringing a hot ass captain back to his room, hey, fist bump, bro. But
Yeah.
like in terms of uh, rules and regulations, she was absolutely in the wrong, right?
Yeah.
And she eventually got kicked out of the Marines for doing stuff like that. The funny thing is, I saw her on CNN a few years later talking about sexual harassment in the Marine Corps, right? And it just pissed me off because I know it happened. I know there's legit cases of it, right? But then you see girls like her on TV bitching about it. It's like, shut the fuck up, you know? So I saw all kinds of just clown show stuff like that going on. But it also had some positives. I mean, I was face to face with Joe Biden. I met world leaders. I met General Conway. General Conway would come up
Yeah.
and talk to us time to time.
Was he the commandant of the Marine Corps at the time, right before
Yeah,
General Amos, right? He was right. Yeah.
yeah. I met Amos too.
I did
Um,
too, man. I don't know if you I met him in Afghanistan. I got a funny story about that, but I've told it like 100
yeah.
times before, so I won't bore you with the details.
Well, because the generals live there at that base. So I would stand duty outside Conway's house. Amos's house is also there. And yeah, Amos, it was surprising to see that he turned out to be the commandant that he was. Because when I knew him, he was cool as fuck. Like he would walk around base with a Jack and Coke and like board shorts and flip flops.
No
Just,
shit.
yeah, just fucking really laid back. And him and Conway were both guys that would always take time to come up and shake our hands and talk to us. Because obviously they walk by, you throw up that salute as fast as you can, right?
Yeah,
But really cool about it. They'd be like, "Hey, what's up, Marine? Talk to you for a second, give you a handshake."
that's cool. I like hearing stories like that because it's like, um, excuse me, you see some leaders, some politicians, like they don't incorporate that into their so ever busy schedule where they can't go out of their way to address the dudes that are there, like in support of them, for insecurity aspects. So it's cool to know that they're like that.
Yeah, well, Conway didn't realize that everybody in that security unit there is an O3. He thought that it was like maybe a B billet or something. So he was talking to me one day, and he's like, "So what are your guys' MOSs?" Me and another guy outside of his house, and we're like, "Oh, we're all infantrymen, sir." And like as soon as we told him that, he damn near hugged us. So it was pretty cool to see that he liked his
His
O3.
grunts. Yeah, hell yeah. So how long did you spend there then at the 8th and I barracks?
10 months.
10 months.
Yeah.
Okay. So then
Yeah.
that they're running you up to speed on I guess all your procedures. I mean, those little, I guess you would say, after schooling things to like get introduced into the actual environment of like how you're going to be incorporating all these things that you've learned into your everyday tasks.
Uh, kind of. Actually, it was in terms of what we were going to do at Camp David or the other place, WACA, White House Communications Agency. They don't really teach you anything because it's really tight-lipped.
Hmm.
Now, of course, you do get training that's applicable, like CQB stuff and blah blah blah. Uh, but they never tell you like, hey, this is going to prepare you for the next step. It's always
Gotcha.
just we're just going to do some training and it's just going to be either infantry specific stuff or whatever.
Okay. So you spend your 10 months there. How do you get told that you're going to be going to Camp David? Is it just like they come around like is there a set time for you to be at the 8th and I barracks? Like every cycle that comes through spends 10 months, or is it just when they
It
find a spot for you?
it depends on how long your clearance takes.
Gotcha.
Me being a little bit older when I joined, it took longer for me because they had more to investigate. Guys who were 19 years old or so, they went a lot quicker.
Okay.
So I
Um,
went. Took me. I was there a little bit longer than average, just because I was 21 when I joined versus being 18 or 19.
okay. So yeah, then what's that like the SF-86 that they have to go through and do for you to like check your clearance and see what type of security clearance you're allowed to get?
Yeah, and I got you have to be able to get a top secret Yankee white clearance, which I don't know how high it is, but it's high enough to carry a loaded weapon around the president.
Nice. That's yeah, that's a pretty prestigious responsibility. I think it's an overlooked thing in this, obviously the mundane bullshit that goes into a job like that. Most guys do understand like the sit around and, hurry up and wait, sit around, not do anything kind of thing, standing fucking post or standing like gate guard duty. So it's definitely not something that's very enjoyable. But what was that? Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. What was that transition like when you went to Camp David then? Like, were you glad to be moving on to the next level, or did you like being at the 8th and I barracks?
Oh no, I hated the barracks.
Okay,
It's the But like I said, looking back on it, there were some good experiences, but it was mostly it is the gayest fucking place you could ever be in the Marine Corps, in my opinion.
got it.
Um, so when you finally get told you're going to go, it's all very sudden. It's very much hurry up and wait. Like you're there doing your guard shifts day in day out, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, you're going to go talk to this lieutenant commander who's a psychiatrist in the Navy," and it's actually she's one of the first. She's one of the people that goes around to different boot camp classes and recruits people. So I recognized her from when I got recruited, and she's a cunt, but she talks to you about how things are going, and I just played the game like, yeah, everything's fine. I'm so happy. Yeah, awesome, cool. She's like, okay, well, we're gonna send you to Camp David. I was like, great. And once you get to Camp David, life is just great. You know, yeah, you're not deploying, but it's very laid back comparatively, and it's probably the best place you could ever get stationed, Camp David, in terms of like quality of life. Like I said, you're not doing infantry stuff, but you are getting training, and the transition was basically just pretty simple. Like if you're a squared away guy, it's going to be simple. You go up there, they put you through a couple of weeks of like introductory training to teach you their SOPs and how things work up there. And then you start guarding Camp David and doing the other things that they have you do.
Okay. And what's the I don't know if op tempo is the right word, but like what kind of rotation are you guys on? Once you get like into that shoot where, you've got the routine down, what is it that your daily tasks are when you're not, I guess on when the president is there?
Well, I don't want to. A
Oh yeah, I
lot of
guess yeah, you probably can't disclose like a lot of the like, oh yeah, we actually start at 09 and start on
yeah,
this end and move over here. This is how we do our roving patrols. Like yeah,
yeah.
but I'm just trying
Here's
to
it.
gauge an idea of the environment and what you guys are doing.
Well, you we essentially would act as guards for that base, and uh, I want to say like a QRF for the Secret Service if they need us.
Got it.
That's the best way I could describe it when the president is there.
Okay.
When not there, it is just a typical day of guard duty, and you still have a QRF force on standby. But it's you're just guarding the base day in day out. Um, but you know, guys up there are typically in very good shape because number one, for that unit, you have to maintain a 285 or higher on your PFT,
Hmm.
and you have to maintain pistol and rifle expert. So, um, dare I say that the people up there are generally a cut above, generally speaking,
Yeah.
a cut above, because you have to maintain those certain standards. It's not elite like MARSOC or anything, but you do have to maintain a high PFT score
Yeah,
and high shoot.
you're squared away Marines. You guys got your shit together, you're physically fit, you're sound in your capabilities with your weapon systems that you have. Did you guys get to do, I don't know if there a range up there on base or nearby that you guys are constantly going out and like practicing those fundamentals and shit?
Yeah, there's a range nearby, and you go there pretty often. Another cool thing about being there is I'm probably one of the only Marines that you'll talk to besides like a recon guy that's used an MP5 on duty.
Nice.
There were times where I was given a full auto MP5 to guard that base with.
That's
But
is it what is it like an old is it all kitted out and tricked out or is it just like iron sights or what?
yeah, cool MP5 Navy model with the
Yeah,
fixed stock.
nice. That's pretty I like that look, dude. That's just a classic fucking Rainbow
Oh,
Six fucking
it's a badass gun. But being there, like when I got out, I got really heavy into competition shooting and things like that. And being at that unit laid the foundation for me being a pretty good shooter. Like
yeah.
I have trophies that I've won from competitions and stuff like that. But we shot so much there that yeah, I had a good foundation for when I got out
I
to
mean
start doing shooting.
oh yeah, it definitely shows. I mean, I follow along with all the things that you're doing, like the range days that you go participate in, the events that you go participate in. So it's good to see that, after and we'll obviously get there, but like after your time in service, I know some guys kind of just like put it away and they don't really give a fuck about maintaining proficiency or like shooting anymore, which, to each their own. But I personally like to see guys that are out there still like, perfecting their trade craft and like sharpening and honing that tip of that spear. So that's good shit. Do you have what would you say your least favorite thing about Camp David is, and then your most favorite thing, like in terms of, or like maybe an event training that you had to do, like a time that somebody came there and it was like, this is the worst fucking day of my life. Just give me like a pro and a con, maybe like, like I said, some training or whatever. What was your up and your down?
Well, the con is, like I said, everybody up there wants to deploy. Nobody up there is a deployment dodger, at least that I knew.
Right.
So that's the con is like those years that I was up there, I missed out on deployments. So that's the biggest con. If you're a guy who wants to go to war, that might make you miss your chance.
Okay, so how are you guys like, I mean, another thing that I like to focus on too, with doing the podcast is talking to guys about like how those things are like mentally affecting you, and I'm not like trying to be like, oh, show me your fucking weaknesses, but what's that
You
mindset
feel,
and how,
you feel like less of a Marine, you know what
yeah,
I mean? And you feel like, because while I was at that unit, I had buddies going over and getting injured and even dying. And then I'm stuck on a base doing security. And like I said, looking back on it, I realized that that really was a good opportunity. But at the time, when you're in that moment and your friends are in Afghanistan getting out there doing the job, some of them are getting injured, some of them are getting killed. And then you're doing this, like, at the time, you view it as some POGAS assignment. So that's going through everybody's heads. And I was just one of the ones that was unlucky and didn't get to leave that unit in time to get a deployment in.
yeah,
But the cons are it's a very small community. Like whenever I meet another guy who's been up there, it's you pretty much have an instant like best
yeah,
friend.
connection, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, granted, I have that same connection with other members of the military and Marines specifically, but it's just even more special because you could meet 100 Marines and nobody's been to that place.
right,
And kind of a funny story when you leave, you get a presidential badge,
yep,
uniform right here.
yep.
Nobody knows what it is when you go to the fleet. So I would make shit up. So I was in the chow hall one time and like the staff sergeant's like, "Hey, Devil Dog, what's that? What's that badge right there? What's that medal?" And I told him I got it doing recruiting assistance. Right. And he believed me because I can say things with a straight face. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, I got this doing recruiter's assistance." And he's like, "For real? I did recruiter's assistance." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, just have the recruiter send you a copy of the orders and you can submit it to headquarters Marine Corps and they'll give you this badge." Right. Totally sold him on it. So I wish I could
So,
follow up with,
that'd be so funny if he's just like, man, that recruiter didn't get back to me yet. I'm just gonna go ahead and buy the pin and put it on my fucking uniform. You got some staff
uh,
sergeant running around with that presidential unit pin or whatever.
yeah. But so the pros are the small community and the training opportunities because that place was a resume builder for when I got out.
So
I got
what's your favorite? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What's your favorite training opportunity that you got to do?
Well, there's two of them. So I did a counter intel, counter surveillance course with the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is a branch of like the NSA. Uh, it was a 2 week course about how to shake off surveillance and how to detect it, and also how to do it yourself if you want to survey somebody. And then the other one was that condensed version of the Marine School.
Right.
And they came up to a training facility for us, and we met them there, and we went through the school. And funny enough, I don't know if you follow Norseman 9.
Yeah, dude, Don Reynolds. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was Gunny Reynolds at the time, but he was one of the instructors for
Fuck
that.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Does he remember you by chance?
So I haven't talked to him on Instagram, but I saw him on Camp Pendleton, and he was a first sergeant then. And I said, "Hey, I was one of the Camp David guys," and he didn't remember me specifically, but he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah,
going up there."
that's pretty cool. I like the things that he puts out there. He's a very educated guy, obviously infantry oriented.
Yeah,
But the things that he focuses on in the sense of keeping morale built and pressing on with the mindset of upholding tradition and legacy. I like the things that he says about, your service and what you do, like the past of things like, yeah, guys have deployed, guys have gone to combat, but that does not define who you are like as a Marine, while you're in and after you get out. And I think that's something that needs to be focused on because nowadays it's, as we're getting older, you realize that, like you said, not everybody had the opportunity to be able to do it. Even guys that went straight to the fleet, they might have gone to a battalion that ju may have just came back from Iraq or did a rotation to did a deployment to Afghanistan, and then you get to the fleet and like you go on the 11th MEU or the 31st MEU, and then bam, your time's up. You're in the fleet for a year and a half. You do a workup, you go on a deployment. You're at 3.5 years. You decide not to re-enlist because you think, oh fuck, there's nothing left for me here. There's a lot of guys in that position, a lot of guys and girls. Like I really got to focus heavy on incorporating everybody into this. Like I never personally worked with females while I was in the Marine Corps, but there's a lot of badass women out there that have done some really good shit, both in training and combat. So, what Don is doing, and a lot of those Instagram pages are doing, being able to combine everybody and show that regardless of your experience, regardless of your MOS, or the branch that you were in, we've all got a lot in common that we're able to, bounce off each other. It makes that connection, like you said, when you meet other service members, it's pretty easy to either spot them or, have a good conversation with them. So I like the stuff that they're doing.
yeah, and he made a post about that. How like, okay, so you didn't deploy to combat. It doesn't mean that your service wasn't valuable or whatever. Because that was probably my. Hang on one second. See, can I turn it this way?
Oh yeah, I got
Yeah,
you. There you go.
I had to plug my phone back in. Um, yeah, so getting out and even in the Marine Corps, that was always something I had to struggle with because you feel like less of a Marine. You feel like you're letting people down because guys that you went to ITB with are going over there. But he made a post about that. But I made that. I came to that realization maybe a couple of years after I got out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing I tell people that, especially people who are thinking about joining the military and the Marine Corps specifically, is like you don't do anything unless you're told to. You know what I mean? And I just simply did not get told to go.
Right.
And once I realized that, I kind of, I guess, forgave myself. I don't know. I don't know what you would call it, but in terms of like my intent and the willingness to go, it was there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like I was probably the easiest recruitment that my recruiters ever had because I walked into the recruiting station. I said, I want to join the Marines. I want to be infantry. Signed everything the same day. You know what I mean? So, yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's so what was like,
But
I mean, I guess there's
I like that he puts that message out there.
definitely,
You know?
I agree. I agree. And I have to be honest that I was definitely, especially while I was in, like I was able from, I was in from '09 to 14, and from 2010 to 2012 I did 3 deployments, like Or
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry, 2013. I went on it in 2013. But then that 3 year span, I did 3 deployments in 3 years, dude. Like did I didn't volunteer for it. I was told to do it. I just went to a unit that happened to be fucking deploying. And that's nobody else's fault and not my own. Like I signed up and the Marine Corps put me where they wanted me. So I just had the opportunity to be able to do that. And I had this like salty mindset that I was like better than other people. I definitely let that like inflate my ego, and that carried on to after my transition out, where it was one hard for me to be able to transition because I was holding on so hardcore to this like idea that I'm like a small unit leader and I'm a fucking war fighter and like I'm capable of doing these things, but I'm not doing that shit anymore. Like I'm living in the glory days, and it was just like a negative thing to carry and like talking shit to people. And like now I don't give a like I know Pogues, dude. There's probably some fucking combat engineer, some motor T fucking dude that's been in more engagements or been blown up more fucking time. Like I'm not as salty as I think I was. Or I'm not, I'm not. And it really hindered my growth after I got out of the Marine Corps and made things a little bit harder for me, especially in the sense of the way that I interacted with people. So, um, I'm trying my best, and that's part of the reason why I want to do this is show that regardless of what you did in your time in service, it's still valid. It combines us all together, and we've got to be there to kind of pick each other up by the bootstraps and support each other, regardless of, like we are all there, like we're in like the same amount of time, like we were in like the same fucking years. Uh,
Yeah.
so if you had the ability to choose to do it, like you definitely are the guy that would have jumped at that opportunity. Do you?
And that mindset, in whether you apply that to like your combat experience or anything, the moment you start believing you're better than everybody because you did something, it's just cancer,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And that's actually a good segue into after I left Camp David, because I went to 2-4 and got put with Echo Company, and they had just come back from Afghanistan.
dude, that's crazy. One of my best friends, he lives like 30 minutes from me. I'm with him all the time. He was with Echo Company, 2-4. His name's Kyle Moser. I'm gonna get him on here, but
Yeah,
he stepped on a pressure plate, lost both of his fucking legs.
yeah. I
Really,
I met him, but he had been injured and he was kind of doing medical stuff when I was there, so I didn't know him well, but I met
yeah,
him a few times.
yeah, he's a good buddy of mine. So when you get to the fleet, how were you received by these dudes that were coming back from their first deployment?
I had to earn their respect for sure, because I was a boot corporal, no combat deployment, 2 ribbons. That's how they saw me. Um, but I had the right attitude because I knew that they were all combat vets. Like some of the privates there had been to combat and I had it. So I think if you asked the guys that were there when I first showed up, I showed them the necessary respect, but I still had to maintain like, well, I'm a corporal and I'm in charge of you.
Yeah,
I think I was pretty good at finding a balance there because I understood that they knew things that I didn't know. Like I had a lance corporal walk me through how to call for fire, right? Um, and for the most part, it was it was a the guys there were willing to teach you, and it was a good experience. And then there were probably maybe a third of the guys were those toxic dudes that were like, "You're a fucking boot. You haven't done shit. You don't know shit." Blah blah blah
right,
blah. And uh, not to shit on their deployment, but the other problem with that mindset is a lot of guys who are like, "Yeah, I have combat experience." They want to act like they all were in Fallujah, versus like, no, actually, you were in Afghanistan and you went on patrol and you got shot at from 300 meters away, and then you returned fire and then you called for mortars, and that was your combat experience. And good on you, but you don't know everything, do you? You know how to
right.
go on a patrol and call for fire. Um, it's not the same as a guy who's like, yeah, I was actually in Fallujah clearing buildings, so if you want to learn about CQB, I know some shit.
Yeah,
Right. Uh, and that's another hamstring of that mindset is you could actually miss out on learning a lot of things because you already think you know stuff because you've been there and done that.
right. No, I
But
definitely.
all you got was a little slice of the pie. You experienced one aspect of combat. Uh, so yeah, I had to deal with the toxic guys, and me being a witty dude, I was pretty much able to deal with them. And then I think once they saw that I wasn't a poor performer, that whole thing kind of went away.
That's good.
But but yeah, I didn't show up there trying to be like, oh, I'm Mr. NCO Corporal. You have to do everything I say, blah, blah, blah. I think I showed those guys the necessary respect, and I won their respect eventually.
Yeah, that's funny. I have I have a funny story about and I'm glad that you did because I hearing you the way that you came into it is better than a lot of guys that I know that come from security forces.
Yeah,
I was
guys with me did not take that approach,
yeah.
and they did not. Uh, like I think by the time I left that unit, I think everybody loved me, you know, and other guys that was not the same. So
Yeah, no, definitely. I remember like the first field op that we did when we got the drop of guys that came from security forces and we were doing like patrolling and like IED detection stuff. This is like out, we were stationed in 29 Palms, but I remember like my buddy Waddell, he was a corporal. We both went to infantry squad leaders course together. Um,
two,
say that again?
were you in 2-5?
No, I was with 3rd LAR, 3rd Light Armored
Oh,
Reconnaissance in 29
okay.
Palms. But yeah, these guys came and we're talking about this stuff and then I jump in and I'm a Lance Corporal still, right? I got NJP'd, so while all my friends are getting promoted to Corporal and Sergeant, like I'm still a fucking Lance, dude. And we'd be talking about some white space stuff and like talking about patrolling techniques and shit. And these guys would be like gaffing me off. They because I was a lance and they're all corporals and they're like, oh, this guy doesn't know shit. And my buddy, he's like, you guys should be fucking paying attention to this. Like, do you know who? And not like that. I'm like. Do you know who this is? Like, this is like the squad instructor's choice grad from fucking infantry squad leaders course. Like Giuliano's been on 2 fucking deployments. He was a Lance Corporal squad leader like on in Afghanistan, not that but like I did the job, um came back, successfully, and it's just funny to see that a lot of guys look down on the fact that they want to try to establish that like I'm hard, like I'm an NCO, and we all know that that's not the case. Yeah, but they learned real quick, and we ended up all becoming friends. Once they're like, oh, okay, this isn't some fucking asshole, like he actually is a knowledgeable dude. He's not just trying to
Yeah.
be defiant because we're fucking security force drops, or like coming from that. And I'm not saying drops, but like they get dropped into the unit. Um, it ends up being good because there's things like when we start doing CQB stuff, some of these guys are more oriented on CQB, so they're able to like implement those tactics where we'd been focused so much on like patrolling in a fucking ranger file, sweeping for fucking IEDs, like all these very one-sided, one slice of the pie tactics. So it was good to get that mesh of different experiences. When you got to 2-4, how long was it? How long you'd probably been in the Marine Corps, like 2.5, 3 years at this point, yeah?
Yep. Yeah. 2012, I went there, and yeah, I mean, I'm glad I got to have that experience too because I got to be a squad leader in an infantry unit, and yeah, not in combat, but still got that experience, and it was good times. And there was some funny shit that happened. Me being me and being a really good shit talker. When I would encounter those toxic guys that were like, "Oh, you're not shit because you haven't deployed," um, I usually clap back at them and they would shut up. So
Well, or you show them that badge and you're like, "Did you get a fucking recruiter's assistance medal, motherfucker?" Like, "What's up? You got this
yeah,
recruiter?" Yeah.
well, and one of my jokes was like that my unit actually conducted the Bin Laden raid and not the Navy. So that was one of my
Uh,
like if somebody got a little bit too uppity because there were times where I had to flex my stripes.
oh, for
Obviously,
sure.
there is an appropriate time for it, and that would be one of the things. And with my deadpan stare that I have, people knew it was a lie, but they would be like, "Does this guy actually think I believe this shit that he's telling me?" But I would just tell these guys this shit straight face, and I'd be like, "It was actually my unit that conducted the Bin Laden raid, so sit the fuck down," that
That's
stuff like.
yeah. That's funny, dude. I did some contracting work after I got out of the Marine Corps and I went to this like WIPS qualification course, and like I worked with all the instructors that were there were all fucking, special forces dudes, whether they were PJs that were teaching the tactical medicine shit, Green Berets and SEALs, like a whole fucking group of them. So I was talking to this guy, And I was like, yeah, you know, actually, after I completed this course, SEAL Team 6 reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to like bypass the pipeline. And I turned it down and because I went and worked, I did after that, I did like a private security stint. I was like a director of transportation for this private security company in Colorado. But the pay sucked, but whatever. It's a good resume builder. But I was like, yeah, I turned down the opportunity to work with SEAL Team 6 so I could go work fucking shit security in Colorado because you know, they just and the guy that I was talking to like did not pick up what I was putting down in the sense that it was a fucking joke, and he just kind of gave me like a blank stare. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah,
You know, come on. I'm obviously not getting fucking picked up by SEAL Team 6 from fucking contracting course. Get
yeah,
the fuck out of here.
yeah.
So
I passed the pipeline because that happens.
yeah, well, you know, one thing that I didn't know that you can try out for Delta Force with in any branch of service, you know, to go to the unit.
Mhm.
You can be from the Marine Corps, you can be and but the weird thing with that is that coming from the Marine Corps, you don't get you're still a Marine. So the Marine Corps can pull you back at any time, but any other branch, transition over into the Army. Like if you came from the Air Force or the Navy, they give you an Army MOS and you're now an Army soldier. But if you're a Marine Corps that go, or I'm pretty sure that that's the way it is. Somebody was explaining this to me, or I was listening to it on a
It went
podcast.
because that's just how the Marine Corps is, you know.
Yeah. But when did you sign a 5-year contract then for going through? So you spent 2 years in the fleet after you had gotten to
Yeah,
2-4.
yeah. I signed a 5-year contract. You have to extend because they need that added time for your clearance to get spun up.
Got it.
Yeah, I did 5.
So what was that o overall like that experience when you were with 2-4? You know, you're down in San Mateo, right? 2-4 is in San Mateo.
Yep, we're
Okay.
attached with Marines.
Did you excuse me, did you guys get an opportunity? Did you go on a MEU or like a UDP?
Yeah, I went on the 31st MEU. Prior to that, you know, I was just doing field ops with the unit, uh, trying to get spun up to be a squad leader. I went to the squad leaders course.
No shit.
Uh,
Did you in Pendleton, you went to infantry squad leaders course?
yeah, it was called AIT then, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
it's essentially the same course. Um, so I went to that. That was a lot of fun. Fucking sucked too, but uh, I think that after I went to that course, when I came back to 2-4, I was like, okay, I got this
Yeah.
because they do such a good. Yeah, I mean, every week you're planning you're doing right an op order,
Yep.
plan control or an attack or an ambush or whatever. You're like they're making you do it. And me being the new guy, uh, they were like, "Oh, you're going to plan this because you haven't done it before." And I was lucky in that in my little squad that they split you up into, I had a recon and a MARSOC guy in there, and I had two other. I had a corporal and a sergeant who both had multiple deployments. So, man, you want to talk about having good mentors and
Oh,
guys
for sure.
guys that can show you the ropes. Like I said, I came out of that course and I was like, I know all the infantry tasks. I know how to write an op order like a champ.
Yeah,
All that.
definitely. I'll go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, my phone says it's 10% power. I just want to make sure I'm charging. Okay.
Yeah, I would say that that's some of the best training that I ever had gotten in the Marine Corps was going to infantry squad leaders course. Like I went after my first deployment as a Lance Corporal, and like everybody else there is like sergeants, multiple fucking combat deployments, a couple corporals, and like 4 Lance Corporals. You had to get like a waiver signed to go as a Lance, but holy shit, that was like you know, I'm writing like 38-page fucking 5-paragraph orders on my
Yeah.
Saturday to turn in on Monday. I'm staying up fucking, you know, all day Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I got to draw out each and every hand and arm signal and explain what it fucking means. You know, you're doing map overlays with multiple fucking patrol routes. And it's like
Yeah.
all that shit, dude. When I went back to the fleet with that, I thought I was on that. I mean, that boosted my ego and my sense of being an effective small unit leader in a way that like I don't think there's I mean other than the trials and tribulations of you know if you're in combat and you're doing all that shit on a daily basis obviously you're learning it there but in the terms of like schoolhouse and training wise like that is some of the best training that the Marine Corps has to offer for its small unit leaders hands fucking down.
Yeah. Like I said, I was, my comfort zone was I mean, I was in my comfort zone when I went back,
Yeah.
you know, because at that point, like lieutenants would give us briefings, and there were terms that I knew that other guys didn't know that had been on deployments,
Yep.
just because I knew all the doctrinal stuff. And
When you hit it
other,
when you hit an officer with that in order to on your mission statement, they're all like, oh, like
oh, yeah, we went on a. But the other cool thing about AIT was I was there when Sergeant Major Castle was the Sergeant Major of Infantry Training Battalion, so I got to
yep.
meet him a few,
Yep,
and that was
same here. I was at Infantry Squad Leaders course in September to December of 2011. So when we were getting ready to finish up, Brad Castle came in and dude, it was so funny because I'm going to be interviewing one of the Marines that was with him on November 14th of 2004 in Fallujah
oh
in the kill house. So at the hell house. So that's he was actually in my unit. He was a company first sergeant. So that'll be an interesting story to get that firsthand perspective from him. But I did not think that Sergeant Major Castle, when you hear the stories of him, you think that this dude's going to be like 6'5", 260 pounds when he walks in the room, and then he walks in and he's like just this small, ripped man, dude. Just like an effective fucking warfighter. You're like, holy shit, Like I did not think that he'd be that small of a guy.
yeah. But yeah, my op orders were locked in, man. I One of the funny moments on the Mew actually was we were in Australia, and we were going to do a squad attack, and they wanted you to brief, do an op order for the attack. And so my op order was spot on, and our company commander was like, have you ever and this is I had about 9 months left in the Marines at this point, or maybe six. I don't know. I was short, but he's like, have you ever thought about becoming an officer? And I was like, no, I'm just gonna get out and be happy. he, was, he was like, he was pissed that I said that. He's like, what the fuck does that mean? Just real angry that I made the mistake of saying it in front of my squad too. So
Yeah, that's there's plenty of things that I've said in front of leadership when my Marines were around that definitely should not have done, but it is what it is. It's all in the past. We've all made mistakes and said some
yeah,
stupid shit. But so you wrap up your time in the Marine Corps. Did you enjoy your time when you went out on the MEU? Did you like going on the 31st MEU?
yeah, I'm glad I got to do that because that's like an age old thing that the Marines have done. So um, again, it's not combat, but you get to train with partner forces and go on port visits and have some fun. And, that's kind of like if you want to talk about the original intent of the Marine Corps, you're on a ship as naval infantry.
Yeah,
So that is the original mission that the Marine Corps was founded for. And I was in a helo company, so I didn't get to do like there were the boat company guys got to do a little bit of VBSS with the recon guys. So that would have been cool to do. But being in helo company, I got to ride in every helicopter that we have except for a Black Hawk,
nice.
you know. And there was some funny shit there too, because doing like the helo dunker and all that stuff and just watching guys freak the fuck out. Um, that was funny. Uh,
That's
at
something
least,
that I've never had to do was the Helo Dunker, the Humvee Dunker or whatever.
yeah, the helo dunker is the training's hilarious because the first thing they show you is that old video of the recon guys in the Chinook. Did you ever see that video?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's from the '90s, and these guys come in on a Chinook. The wheel gets hooked on the net around the side of the carrier, and then the whole thing gets caught up, and it just go flies backward and capsizes into the water. And like half the platoon of these guys died, and that's where and these are recon guys, so they're good swimmers, and about half of them died. So
Jeez.
that's where they decided we need to do underwater egress training so guys know how to get out of the choppers. And so, but that's how they start off the training, just scaring the fuck out of you. Like, yeah, so this is why we do this, because this could happen. Your chopper could capsize into the water.
Yeah, and you're some like fucking PFC Lance Corporal like shaking in your boots as you're strapped into a fucking helo.
And then, yeah, what they do is you have all your gear on, and then you do a couple of different runs, but the final test run is you're blindfolded and you have to get out of the chopper with all your kit on, being blind, because in the ocean you're not going to be able to see anything.
Yeah.
Um, But funny story with that is we had a brand new corpsman on the Mew, and he was so new he still addressed me by corporal, right? Like usually corpsmen, it's very relaxed with them because you don't want to piss off the guy that's going to patch you up.
Yeah.
So I used to carry a knife like right here on my plate carrier, and he asked me like, "Hey, Corporal, why do you carry your knife there?" You know, because he's brand spanking new corpsman. And I'm like, oh, well, this is so that if the chopper goes down in the water, I can just start stabbing motherfuckers to get to the window so I can get out. And he believed me, right? The So maybe a month or two later, after I told him that, we're on I think it's a 53. It's the big, just the big Bertha helicopter.
Yeah, like the
I,
dual rotored one, the two like
no, not
captain.
that one. The other big one. I always screw up the numbers. I think it's a CH-53, but it's one chopper blade, and it's
Oh, I
got
know. Okay, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. The Sea
yeah,
King or something. The
the
CH-53
C,
Sea King.
the C Knight.
Your Sea Knight, yeah.
Yeah, you can fit like a whole platoon in them. They're huge. But we had a hydraulic leak as we were coming in, so we're coming back onto the carrier. We have a hydraulic leak, and we drop below the deck, and we're maybe 10 to 20 feet above sea level. And everybody's kind of, it puckers your butthole. Like, I don't want to go underwater. Even with that training, I'm pretty sure I'm going to die. But this corpsman's sitting directly across from me, and he's just white as a ghost, freaking the fuck out. He looks over at me, and I just smile and point at my knife. Like, don't get in my way, motherfucker.
Oh, that's fucking funny, dude. That is funny.
Oh yeah, and so he just freaks out even more. But the pilots, they're good pilots. They fixed the leak. We got back on the carrier.
Nice. So, you guys have, a successful run, successful deployment. You get to go around, work with some partnered forces, drink some beer in some foreign countries and shit. You get
Yeah.
back and you only have a few months left. Are you at this point already solidified in the idea of getting out of the Marine Corps?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was nothing like it's something I always wanted to do, but once I got in, I'm like, I can't really do this for a career. Because the other thing is, like I said before, you only do what you're told.
Right.
And if you have your own goals, the Marine Corps doesn't give a shit. I mean, like I said, I was a guy that joined the infantry. I wanted to deploy, and I still couldn't do that, even though I wanted to. You would think that the Marine Corps would be like, here's your ticket,
Yeah.
go on over. But they didn't. So imagine having like goals of your own, the Marine Corps is not going to accommodate.
Yep.
Um,
So that's obviously something that compels you to want to get out, seeing that the inability for you to have some progress and do what it is that you actually wanted to do. But while you were in the Marine Corps, can you think back on how you made an impact on the Marine Corps, like legacies and traditions, while you were in your time in service?
Me personally, I don't know. I don't know if I had an impact on any of that.
Well, how about the way that like maybe you instilled the mindset or the training or in your junior Marines, the guys that you're there, your young Lance Corporals and PFCs or some shit. What was some
Oh,
things that you did to instill some legacy and tradition into them?
um, I don't know if I instilled any particular tradition, but I think I was an example of what a good leader is. Like I treated them with respect. I tried to lead by example. And like I said, I wasn't the guy that was like, I'm in fucking charge and, I'm better than you because I'm a higher rank and blah, blah, blah. Um, I wasn't a guy who yelled all the time. I wasn't a guy who got in people's faces. I tried to give my dudes some autonomy. Like I had a guy who was having marriage issues. His girl was cheating on him. Um, and our chain of command pretty much wanted us to go straight to them and be like, hey, this dude's having marriage issues, right? Well, I gave him some leeway. I was like, hey, what do you want to do? This is your marriage. In my opinion, the Marine Corps has nothing to do with what's going on. Right. So I put the ball in his court. I'm like, this is your life. If you need help, let me know. We'll reach out to the chain of command. But if you want to handle this on your own, you can do it. So I always tried to give guys that sort of respect. And about the only time I got pissed at people was when they were gaffing training off
Yeah.
for obvious reasons. Um, so I guess I just try to be a good example of a leader. And I think if you ask people that served with me, they would say I was a good leader.
Good. That's a good
I don't
thing.
I don't know if that impacts training and our, traditions and whatnot, but
Well, I think it is because then you show and set the example of what it is to be a small unit leader. Like how guys are going to look up to be like, hey, quiet, get out of here. Um, you know, the way that you're able to effectively like run a squad or implement the things that you've learned and pass that knowledge on. I think that that's probably one of the biggest things I think that most guys overlook is while you're in your time in service, like the way that you set the example for the guys that are beneath you is how they're going to set themselves up for success as they get into that position. So, if you were an effective leader, if you're able to properly relay that message and employ that knowledge on these dudes so they can learn and progress and be proficient, I think that upholds with, that testament to legacy. Because you're putting on something behind, maybe they don't directly say that like, hey, John was the guy that like led me to do this, but they carried on those things and they're able to pass it down. Their junior Marines got it. So I think that right there upholds legacy, that you leave behind for the Marine Corps, like how you instilled it in the Marine Corps. If I'm speaking out of line, if you don't think that's the case, obviously, there's a, hey, dogs, be quiet. Um, but when you make that decision to get out, is it difficult for you to, I don't know, come to terms with that? Like, are you like, fuck, I wish I could have stayed in. I wish I could have gone out on deployment. I don't feel fulfilled with my time in service.
well, I definitely wish I could have gotten a combat deployment. However, by that time, I realized that getting one was completely out of my control, and I wasn't going to reenlist to try to get one because I could end up wasting another 4 years trying to do it. I had friends that did. They stayed in, and I told them it was dumb. Like they're like, no, if I reenlist, I can get a deployment. I'm like, dude, you already gave them 4 or 5 years. Don't, if you're only doing it for that, don't stay in. You know.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's the only thing that would have kept me in is if I knew that things were hot in like Iraq and Afghanistan still, and I could go over there. But getting out was easy. I still had the regret of not going to war, but overall, getting out was a clear decision for me.
Okay. Did you have some stressors or like some struggles with like integrating yourself back into the civilian life?
Not really, man, because I think what also helped was I remember life before the Marine Corps. Like I had been to college. I wasn't it, a lot of guys. I think this is a factor in people having problems transitioning is they go from high school to Marine Corps. They never had a period in their life where they're an adult outside of the Marine Corps.
Right.
So for me, like TAPS training when they're teaching you how to reintegrate. I remember the reserve recruiter coming to us and trying to scare us into either reenlisting for active duty or re-upping into the reserves. And one of his scare tactics was, the economy's bad. You guys ain't gonna be. It's gonna be hard to find a job. All that shit. And I knew it was a fucking lie because I had been a 19-year-old kid doing just fine as a civilian. So, of course, every transition is difficult. There's going to be speed bumps. You're not going to be where you want to be immediately because that's just how life is. But I'd say overall, it was not a hard thing to do.
Okay.
But that's because I think I had the right mindset. I knew that I could be successful outside of the Marine Corps. I didn't have any worries about that. Even if I didn't end up where I thought I would be, I remember being a civilian prior to the Marine Corps, and things were fine. You go to work, you pay your bills, um, and yeah, and my mindset about it was I didn't know quite what I wanted to do, but I knew that I was going to always just keep making moves until opportunity came knocking.
What was the first opportunity that you took advantage of?
So my first job was a fucking window liquor security job, making like $15 an hour. So, however, like I said, I didn't feel bad for myself. Like, oh, I've only got this. Yeah, like it was a security job. I wasn't even armed, right? So I went from being a Marine to an unarmed security guard. But I never like felt sorry for myself. I never moped around like, oh, this is the only job I have. It was a stepping stone job. And when I was in that job, I performed well. And uh, I was working for an electric company. So For anyone who sees this, if you're looking for a job, if you happen to be transitioning out, there's something called critical infrastructure protection. And it is a legit stateside security gig. A lot of these jobs pay very well. So the guys who did that for that company noticed me and I got hired with them. So that was like the first door that opened for me, because now I'm making close to 60,000 a year doing that. And it gave me more training. I learned how to do threat assessments on different facilities using something called the Carver method, CARVER. So that's a marketable skill that I learned. And it's all because, when I got out, I was like, yeah, it's going to suck. Transitions are hard, but I'm just going to keep making moves until shit happens.
Okay.
So if you have that mindset and you understand that you're not going to be where you want to be immediately, you are responsible for making your own purpose in life, you're going to have a much better time than if you keep looking back. And because one thing I also never said to myself was, a month ago I was a squad leader and now I'm an unarmed security guy. I never said that to myself. I always said, like, well, this is where I'm at now, but I'm going to be somewhere else in a year. So yeah, like I said, when I got hired for that job, my pay tripled almost. I learned marketable skills. I worked with a good team of dudes. Like 3 of us were Marines, 1 of us was a Navy SEAL, like legit guys that had good experience, and I got additional training on top of that. So that was probably the first door that opened for me.
Okay. Now, when did you make this, or I guess get the idea that have you always been somebody that tinkers with gear? Like when did you get the idea that you wanted to start working with gear?
Well, I remember always jerry rigging stuff in the Marines. So I think that's where I first learned that that's where I first started tinkering with gear, because I would jerry rig stuff with 550 cord like a lot of guys do.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't until around 2021 that I decided to start making gear. So kind of fast forwarding through the TEP stuff, or the critical infrastructure protection.
Well,
So I
if
worked.
that plays a role, I'm sorry, if that plays a role into you getting to where you got with that, like by all means, go ahead and explain that. I just figured that you had the job and like now
Well,
you're
that job, there were times where we did protection for the executives of that company who are millionaires, and there are times where we would do protection for the employees, because people get crazy about their fucking electric bill. So we would have these customers who wouldn't pay their electric bill, and then when our guys would show up to shut their power off, they would come out with guns and threaten them. So there were certain times where I had to go to houses with these guys to make sure that they were safe. And I was like wearing low vis stuff. So concealed handgun, concealed body armor, concealed radio, all that.
okay.
So that kind of gave me some insight into making low vis gear, because that's pretty much the focus of what I make. But I went from that job to being a police officer, which is what I do now.
Oh, no shit. Okay, I did not know that.
And so I saw the riots in 2020 firsthand. I responded to those. Um, and I remember seeing like civilians caught in the middle. And first of all, these civilians that I saw, it was 100% their fault. They didn't live in the area. They came down to see what was happening. They got caught up in it. However, it dawned on me like, man, it'd be really nice to have like a concealed way to carry ammo, radio, whatever. You could have a full combat loadout concealed under your cover garment and a rifle in your bag that you can quickly deploy, right? And so that's where I came up with the Fenris rig. So
Was that your first concept? Was the Fenris like your first idea of what you wanted to do with making gear?
no, I came up with something that I dubbed the NightFighter rig first, but it was too close to the Spiritus bank robber for my.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Just like that slick, like 3 mag placard with like a pistol mag and like one for a like smoke or flashbang or something, right?
It would imagine the Spiritus Systems bank robber, but a split rig. That's
Okay,
basically that's what I was selling.
got it.
And I was like, you know what? That's too much like their rig, and I don't want to be another company copying Spiritus systems. Because there's a lot of companies that just straight up copy them.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the drawing board, and my first design of the Fenris was actually each side had 3 horizontal mags. So that was the Gen 1. And I sold that for a few months, and then that had some problems. So I redesigned it again into the current version that I have now,
Yeah.
where you have 1 vertical mag and 2 horizontal on each side.
Yep.
But that was my first idea. Yeah.
Okay.
The first real product that I started marketing. The NightFighter rig only lasted a month or two to kind of get my foot in the door.
Oh,
Then, like I said, for integrity reasons, I decided not to sell it anymore.
well, there you go. You get a little JJ did tie a buckle, holding true to those core values.
That's exactly what I said too. I'm like, when my drill instructors want me to do this,
Yeah.
you know,
So did you find that to be like obviously you've got your career, you're a police officer now, and then you do this gear production on the side for the Fenris rig. You got your regular 6 mag chest rig. You make your bandolier. Now I see you're working on the overt style of the Fenris. Do you find this to be like a creative outlet for you? And not to say that like, oh God, you're like, so much stress and pressure and like, do you enjoy going and does it give you like a sense of fulfillment when you're making these products?
yeah, absolutely. Because another thing is, I wanted to start a side business to make extra income. And I thought to myself, well, what do I know and what am I good at? And I realized like I've been wearing tactical gear since I was 21 years old as part of my job. Whether I was a Marine doing security for an electric company or being a cop, I've worn some type of nylon gear for work. And I also just enjoy it. You could call me a gear queer of sorts. I
Yeah.
have gear. So yeah, it's a creative outlet for me. It's also just a good skill. Like when I have like my Alice packs, when I want to mod them, I know how to do it because I know how to sew and cut things and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then it's fulfilling too when you get to help somebody. I'll have guys message me like, "Man, your rig's badass, and here's how I use it," and they'll send me photos of what they're doing with it, and that's cool. I built a lot of connections. I've made good friends just from selling gear and modding stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I like to see like, obviously that's something like a point to be proven in the sense of, a lot of people will complain that when they get out, especially infantry guys, that they don't have a skill set or they don't have a way to market themselves. But if you look back on it, I mean, everything from leadership to communication to canvassing to, security details, weapons handling, there's very niche area of jobs that guys can take advantage of. Not everybody wants to do that, but it seems like you found that and then you just worked hard in that venture and you've gotten, pretty large following and also like, you're doing and I don't know, you're obviously not going to dive into your financials, but it seems like you're able to put a lot of products out there and be able to answer the need for demand of the stuff that people see that you're making.
Yeah, I try. I mean, if you ask some of my customers, they've definitely waited a month or two to get a rig. But yeah, if I'm not at my day job, I'm usually here sewing. So
Okay. Um,
yeah,
what do you think that are you involved with the VA at all? Or you do any nonprofit organizations? Do you participate in any of that stuff?
no, I don't.
Have you
At least not with the VA. Now I do. There's a match here in Arizona called the Independence Day match, ran by Independence Training. It's a charity match, and I sponsor it. I've sponsored it since last year. So what I do is I donate prizes for that, and it's usually my products, and they give the money to, I believe it's like a veteran canine foundation.
okay?
Um, Other than that, though, no, I'm not involved much in charity stuff. It's probably something I need to fix, but
Yeah, there's a lot of good organizations out there, and I mean in the sense of finding a different, activity to do, being a part of a group, finding a little tribe of, I'm sure you being a police officer, you made some solid connections with guys. You go to the range, you're doing matches. So I'm sure that you've got some pretty solid connections and, like your own little tight-knit group of people. But if you're ever interested, there's some great organizations out there that do some cool shit, like whitewater rafting or rock climbing, mountain biking, skydiving. There's a lot of nonprofit programs that have some cool opportunities for veterans. So I don't know. I like doing that stuff because I feel like it's a way for me to integrate and give back to other veterans, regardless of their experience or whatever, with all the things that I've gone through, all the ups and downs and, therapy and stuff. Like I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not somebody that's like subject matter expert on everything, but I've got a little insight to certain things. And, you never know what people are going to take from, the things that you talk about and the things that you do. That's why I like doing this as well. But what do you think that your next objective is, or where do you want to take the Night Fighter stuff, all the gear that you're making?
Uh, I have no fucking clue.
You're just
Yeah,
you're just riding the waves, Like I mean, do you
yeah.
think that it's lucrative at this point for you to do as a side business? Is the juice worth the squeeze?
So I make enough money off of it to where I'm going to keep doing it, but I definitely couldn't support myself off it.
Right.
Uh, the other thing is I have a family, so I could support myself if I was single, but I cannot support a family off this job. So I'll
Understood.
do it, but it's going to be a side gig.
Okay. Have
And
you ever thought of like maybe taking it to the next level in terms of production?
yeah, but that'd be a big gamble for me. So I have to. I think the other thing is you can't rush it. I think I'm a couple of years away from that.
Okay.
Because when I first started, I was making a few hundred a month, and now I'm making a few thousand, and then
No shit. Are you really?
yeah, and
Wow.
maybe in the future if I can bump it up to tens of thousands per month, I'll start doing it full time. But it's the other thing is kind of like transitioning out of the military. I understood that this is a journey. Like you're not going to be Haley strategic at day one.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's a good dude. That's a good point to make because I think a lot of guys get out and whether it's some sort of entitlement or thinking that they have like gotten all this experience that somebody like they deserve to get opportunities or they deserve to have people, you know, sign up for their pistol or rifle class or buy their fucking chest rig or plate carrier or fucking sling that they make. The Travis Haley's been doing shit since, I mean,
Oh yeah,
you know, for,
he's been building that empire forever. I remember
yeah.
being in and watching Art of the Dynamic Rifle.
Dude, I have the
And
DVD. I have the
action.
DVDs over in my DVD collection. I've got like the Art of the Carbine and like the all his old the Magpul videos, dude. So fucking funny to watch. Something like with Chris Costa, so funny.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not really like you were asking me about transition from the military and all this other stuff. I'm not a very encouraging person when it comes to that because then I don't want to say I'm not encouraging. I'm just not going to sit there and go, "Oh yeah, man, you should feel sorry for yourself." You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I actually have I actually have a bad taste in my mouth about a lot of veterans and the way they act when they get out.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like you should not have the mindset that anybody owes you shit. You are owed your paycheck, place to sleep, food, and the benefits guaranteed to you in your contract when you get out, like the GI Bill.
Yeah.
Nobody owes you a fucking thing. And if you have that mindset, you'll be much better off.
I mean, I'm guilty of that, dude. When I first got out, I had that fucking mindset.
Yeah, but it's the same with my gear. Um, eventually I might do this full time, but I understand that it's going to take work and it's going to take time.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I don't.
we've been going for about, oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, nothing. Go ahead.
Okay, no, we've been going for about 2 hours. We covered a lot of good stuff. You've shown us, a lot of insight on different experiences that I think a lot of Marines, don't have. that lifestyle of being the security forces thing, especially being at Camp David, coming to the fleet, making your way, transitioning out, and now you've got, I would assume that being a police officer is a stable career for you, and you're making a lucrative side. Well, if you want to call it that. That's what I think, lucrative side business where you're creating products that's, obviously right now it's in large demand. Everybody wants to, you know, go to the range and everyone's got tactical gear now. The amount of resources and availability of tactical gear and knowledge out there is awesome. So you've been making some pretty sweet shit. Like I told you before, I've got pretty much all of your products. I like running them. So I've got the nice little I myself am a gear queer, if you want to put it that way. One thing that I was looking at, that mutant pouch that Spirit is just, or I don't know if they just put it out, but it's like I don't know, you can put it on wherever on your rig, but it can hold 8 fucking 5.56 mags in a radio. So I'm like, dude, that's it. That's clutch right there for sustainment, because nowadays you look at a lot of rigs that you see are like micro fight chest rigs. Like I think once Spirit has dropped that, so many companies, and I don't know if they were the first ones, but that really became a big thing of just like this 3 mag placard with like a fucking GP pouch area or whatever, and like maybe a spot for like a pistol or a flashbang or something. And you see that a lot of people don't understand sustainment. And like, yeah, it's great for the range. If you're running, some drills and shit and being able to reload magazines, that's fine. But if you're talking about going out and like duking it out with a, you know, whatever, I don't want to start talking, saying some shit that'll come back to bite me in the ass. But
And
uh,
up for
yeah, we'll just say op four. But like having that sustainment to be able to push on, because like maybe you load 28 rounds, 30 rounds in your mags, you got 120 rounds, one in your rifle and three on your plate carrier. Like that's not going to hold you up very long. So I mean, gear ideas like that, I love seeing the innovation and the cool shit that's coming out there. And it's cool to talk with you because you're a part of that. You're making some new designs like the Fenris. I don't think I don't think anything out there can match the Fenris. And like I said, I own one. I see a lot of people out there talking about it. That Strife 17 dude, he that's actually like the first time I think I had heard of or seen somebody else like run. He like keeps it in his fucking pack when he like packs his gear out. And it's like a good idea, because if you have to like drop kit and you need to fucking be on the move, you already have a sustainment stores 6 fucking mags. You just throw that on and you're fucking light with your rifle and you're good to go.
Yeah, for what it does, I think it's the best concealment rig out there. And then it's also versatile enough to use with other stuff. Like you
Yeah.
can throw it a kit, whatever you want,
Agreed.
over a
Um,
plate.
is there any word of advice? I mean, you've given some good insight on this, like getting out, not feeling entitled, um, you know, and actually advocating for yourself and working hard. If there's like a young soldier or Marine or somebody transitioning or somebody's in a rut right now, what words of advice do you think that you would have to give somebody to make them like motivate them to do something on their own, or go out there and take advantage of some of the creative outlets that you have available and making your own product, or branching off and going to find a new job? What enlightenment and motivation could you give to somebody?
Um, you just pretty much what I did. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I never said to myself, "Oh, yesterday I was a Marine and now I'm this." I just viewed it all as I'm moving on to bigger and better things. Maybe not today, but somewhere I'm going to be where I want to be. And you just have to keep moving forward. And not every day is going to be cool. Some days you're going to feel like shit, like you're not doing anything and not accomplishing anything. But just fucking fake it till you make it. Go through the motions, however you want to put it. You just got to keep going forward. As cliche as that sounds, but it's
Yeah,
true.
I was gonna say you got to keep pressing forward. Yeah. Yeah. But no, I'm really glad that we got this opportunity to do this. Like I said, I always reiterate things, or I always hit on them. I've got a bad memory. Um, but being able to show the different side of things and then show the positivity that you can, like the things that you can accomplish, and there's success and resilience after time in service. Not everybody's a broken fucking toy. A lot of people think that there's veterans out there that they can't assimilate back into civilian life because of X, Y, and Z experience. So you're a testament to the fact that if you keep moving in the right direction, that you can do something more, be successful. So I appreciate your time. I thank you for your service, John. You know, a lot of people don't say that to everybody. You know, you're out there, yes, sir. Um, but thank you for taking your time out of your day to come chat with me. Stay safe there on the streets, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the kind of products you're going to be bringing up next.
Yeah, I've got some stuff in the works. If you're an Alice Pack fan, I've got an upgrade kit that I'll be coming out with eventually.
Sweet. I actually need, if you can figure out, there's a way I bought, I forget what company it was from, but the waist, the belt strap or the belt, you know, that goes around your hip strap. I the when you come through, there's those little like on the actual ruck frame. I need something to secure it tighter to the frame because the belt will shift side to side while I'm wearing it. So if you can figure out a better way to secure a belt to the frame itself, because the original one I had just deteriorated to shit and the buckle broke on it, so I had to get something new. That would be my one ask for you. If you can come out with a better hip belt, and like sits secure and tight, whatever way you can figure out to strap it or clamp it or fucking tie it down. I need something like that.
I'll see what I can do.
All right, bro. Well, hey, John, again, appreciate your time, brother, and I look forward to seeing what you're bringing. Um, take care, man. Thank you again.
Yeah, dude.
For
Stay
sure.
safe.
Yeah, we'll
I'll
do.
have
And that was John, United States Marine, owner of NightFighter. Check him out on Instagram. I'll tag you on the video and everything. But take care, brother. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.